Hi everyone. Each week we're going to assign a bunch of questions to you and we're going to ask you to go through them all and give it your best shot. We'll post the solutions for you as well. I'm going to try my best to debrief some of those questions in a weekly video. We'll leave a question or two for a live debrief if we manage to have a live session that week, and the rest are for you to do on your own as extra practice, and you should be asking us questions if they don't make sense. For this series of videos, I'll be using the Practitioners Income Tax Act. I'll be using the 58th edition for 2020. And if you have a different version of the ITA, I still think you'll be able to come to, if not the exact same answer, you'll be able to use the process that we're using to arrive at the same answer for whenever you're watching this video. So you've got questions, we've got answers, let's go. Let's start by taking a look at the question. Question 1. The detailed table of sections at the beginning of the ITA can be a useful tool to look up provisions. Required, using the detailed table of sections, identify the provision which deals with each of the following items. You must use correct citation format. Remember that citations are very important to us in any tax course. You might be familiar with the word citation from a previous course. Perhaps you've had to write a term paper or a research paper in the past in your studies. In those situations, a citation would have been used to refer to a very specific article, textbook, or a journal. In tax, we use citation as a very specific set of coordinates so we can find a very specific piece of legislation, often referred to as a provision. So this set of questions, while it doesn't ask us to read anything in the ITA, we might go and do some reading in the ITA, but really the point is to make sure you get used to how to cite correctly. Let's get started. Question 1, Part 1. The value of benefits received by employees. So turn the book sideways, go to that first visual indicator or demarcation, and go to the first page of that. What do you see? And you should be looking at the detailed table of sections. I'm using the online version of the Practitioners Income Tax Act just so I could demonstrate to you a bit easier on a screen. It's going to look almost identical to the physical version. You'll recall from a prior video that subdivision A was for income or loss from an office or employment. So here we are with Part 1 of the Income Tax Act, then we have Division A. We see then Division B, computation of income, and then we get to Subdivision A, income or loss from an office or employment. We see it starts at Section 5, and then it goes to 5 subsection 1, 5 subsection 2, and then we get to Section 6. 6 subsection 1 refers to the amounts to be included as income from office or employment. And then we get to 6 subsection 1 paragraph A, or 6(1)(a). And this relates to the value of benefits. So isn't that what the question was looking for? So the answer to the first question is Section 6, subsection 1, paragraph A. Question 1, Part 2, interest income from property. We've talked about income or loss from a business or property in a prior video. That was in Subdivision B. So go back to the detailed table of sections and find Division B, Subdivision B. Here we are, Subdivision B, income or loss from a business or property. You'll see that it starts in Section 9. Then it goes on to Section 9, subsection 1, 2, 3, Section 10. Eventually we get to inclusions. Inclusions meaning items that are included or added in the net income calculation. Section 12 begins with 12, subsection 1, income inclusions. Paragraph A refers to services, etc., to be rendered or goods to be delivered. Paragraph B refers to amounts receivable. You might be familiar with the terminology accounts receivable. And then we get to 12, subsection 1, paragraph C, or interest. And that is an inclusion under Subdivision B, income or loss from business or property. The answer then to question 1, Part 2, is Section 12, subsection 1, paragraph C. Question 1, Part 3. The definition of principal residence for the purpose of calculating the capital gain on the sale of an individual's home. there's a few ways to go about this. You could go to subdivision C because the question specifically mentions the capital gain of something, an individual's home. We could also go and look in the index and try to look up the word principal residence because it's implied in the question that this might be a defined term. Let's try it that way. Let's go to the index. So grab the ITA, turn it sideways, and then go to the last visual marker and the first page of that last visual marker. That'll bring you to the index. And you'll end up looking at a page like this. This index obviously begins with the letter A, and we've discussed this before. Page numbers are not given, rather provisions are given. Because we're looking for principal residence, start flipping the page until you get to the page that contains principal residence. Here we are, principal residence. In my version of the Income Tax Act, this can be found on page 2477. Chances are it's somewhere close to that in your version. We can see that the term is defined in section 54. Why don't you turn to section 54? Turn to page 257 or close to that, and you'll get to section 54, which is full of definitions that are for this subdivision, the subdivision being subdivision C. And if you're using a physical version of the ITA, you could just let your eyes scroll to the top of the page and you'll see that you're in subdivision C. I can't do the same thing for you here because I'm not using a physical version of it on the screen. You'll see that the definitions, as you would think, start with the letter A. We're looking for principal residence, so you might have to flip the page a few times. Go ahead. In my version of the Tax Act, you get to the definition of principal residence on page 261. Perfect. We found the definition of principal residence for the purpose of calculating the capital gain on the sale of an individual's home. We found where it was defined in subdivision C, and subdivision C deals with taxable capital gains and allowable capital losses. Still, how do we cite a defined term? We do it as follows. Start with the section, then a space, and then in quotes, write out the name of the term that's being defined. And since that's all we were asked to do, the citation is as simple as that. Let's go a bit further. At a high level, let's take a look at the rest of section 54 for principal residence. Notice that under the definition of principal residence, there's some wording, and then there's a paragraph A, A.1, B, B subparagraph I, or 1, B subparagraph 2, or we could go principal residence, paragraph C, subparagraph I, or C subparagraph 2. What I'm trying to convey to you is that if we were looking for a rule that's a bit more specific than just the definition, we might have to drill down further. We might have to look at a very specific paragraph, such as paragraph A or A.1. If that's what we were asked to do, how would we cite that? After writing out the section, in this case 54, and the term in quotations being defined, you would then write out the rest. So if you had to go to the paragraph level, you could just type out the paragraph. Or if you had to go further to the subparagraph level, you would do that too. So that's how you could go further if you had to. Now we've answered those three questions, but I still have some time. I'd like to take a look at reading some of the Income Tax Act. Now these are not provisions we have to go into any great depth right now. I just want to give you an idea of how we could look at things. How about we start by going to section 6, subsection 1, paragraph A. How about you find that in your ITA? In my version of the Income Tax Act, I'm on page 6, and we begin with section 6, subsection 1, amounts to be included as income from an office or employment. Now, whenever reading a paragraph in the Income Tax Act, it's important to understand with what context is that paragraph being described. So you've got to read the section and subsection first in order to have any hope of really understanding the paragraph. Let's take a look at this one as an example. So 6 subsection 1 begins by saying there shall be included in computing the income of a taxpayer for a taxation year as income of an office or employment such of the following amounts as are applicable. That is a long-winded way of saying the following amounts will be included in a taxpayer's income with respect to employment. The first thing is the value of benefits. Let's read about that. The value of board, lodging, and other benefits of any kind whatever received or enjoyed by the taxpayer or by a person who does not deal at arm's length with the taxpayer in the year in respect of, in the course of, or by virtue of the taxpayer's office or employment. Let's pause there for a moment. Think about what it's saying. It specified a few benefits that have to be included in income, specifically boarding and lodging. But it also says any other benefit that the taxpayer receives or enjoys. And then it goes a step further. It's not just the taxpayer. It's anyone that the taxpayer is dealing with not at arm's length. And arm's length is a concept we'll cover in more depth later on in the course. But for now, just for now, we can think of arm's length a lot more simply as close relations. So think of it as a mother, father, brother, sister, or a child. It is more complicated than that though, so don't hold me to that definition. Anyhow, all of that's to be included in someone's income with respect to their office or employment. Let's keep reading. It goes on to say, except any benefit. So we're going to exclude certain things. What things? Well, whatever's written in subparagraph I, or 1, and subparagraph 2, and subparagraph 3, and subparagraph 4. On and on it goes. And that's why it's so important to read everything within its context. Let's look at subparagraph 4 as an example. Subparagraph 4 says, derived from counseling services in respect of the mental or physical health of the taxpayer or an individual related to the taxpayer. Now, if we only read subparagraph 4, you might think that subparagraph 4 is referring to something that has to be included in income. That's why we have to put everything into context, right? Let's take another look. Paragraph A specifically says to include the value of board, lodging, and other benefits of any kind whatever received or enjoyed by the taxpayer or by somebody else who does not deal with the taxpayer at arm's length in respect of their office or employment. Except the following, meaning you can exclude some value derived from counseling services in respect of the mental or physical health of the taxpayer. So it can be tricky, and we understand that. What we're going to do in our time together is if there's a provision that we really need you to understand, you'll be assigned readings that you need to do if you want to understand things better, questions to practice how to apply that provision or that legislation, and we'll do live sessions and videos like this to help you really understand specific parts of the legislation. But right now, at least in this video, we just wanted to make sure you got some practice with citations, citing things properly. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.